Gala, thank you. And then Dave Kaiser was there. Good group, good dialogue. But apparently there were 2 fundraisers today, golf fundraisers. So the people they were expecting.
There she is. Now we can start.
Maybe do a part 2.
So I'll call the meeting to order. Ally, would you please call roll?
Yes, Jenny Sullivan.
Here.
Juan Gonzalez.
Here.
Mark Smith.
Here.
Dan Bruno.
Here.
Craig Leggett.
Here.
Dave O'Brien.
Here,
We have a quorum. We have 6 out of 10.
good. And the late Mr. Campbell will be here in 5 minutes, he says.
Legend.
Okay. First, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the August 14th board meeting. Moved by Dan, second by Mark.
I have a comment. If you look on the first page under canal side map, an update, the 3rd paragraph down, Mr. Bruno, existing Mr. Home. The request for proposal on final plan is struck. And it says he estimated these costs to be around $3 million in the RFP. The way that reads, it sounds like the RFPs would cost $3 million. They don't. You may want to reword that and say estimated construction costs be around $3 million.
Okay, we'll
The
do.
RFPs.
Right, okay.
Okay,
Anyway, that was my comment.
any other comments? Need a motion to approve with the adjustment made by Mr. Bruno. By Dan, do I have a second? Second by Mark. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Treasurer, he is not here, but Mr. Barton will try and fill his shoes.
Okay, so we'll start with the accounts payable page. Are there any questions with the accounts payable page?
The last release, is that just a one-time payment?
Yeah, that is, you talking about the realtor or legal?
Yeah, the realtor commission.
Yeah, the realtor commission, that is 4th of 4 payments.
The,
So we will be,
for the additional acres.
yeah, so what happens is there is some short-term leases and some long-term leases. So you'll see different accounts payable depending on the different lease arrangements.
This is the last payment of that.
At least the big one
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
The other one's a monthly, since it's a monthly fee, then we'll be billed monthly.
And then, yes.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, so no other questions. Moving on to the financial statements. Just a brief summary. Our operating revenue of $332,000 is $86,000 greater than our operating expenses at $246,000. Obviously, we're on the operating side, operating in the black. The primary driver in operating revenues is our canal side lease income of $246,000. Primary driver in operating expenses are staff expense and payroll, $110,000. Then professional services of $38,000. Contractual services of $36,000. As far as the canal side energy park expenses of $179,000, $62,000 is reimbursable through the engineering work that's been done. That will be through our grant, will be reimbursed. We also have $47,000 for various power related improvements, both the conveyor power after the conveyors and the metering. And then $30,000 is for our realtor fees, of which we just talked about. We're paying a 4 was just made. As far as our balance sheet, it's in strong condition, $1.39 million in cash and $232,000 in receivables, with only $42,000 in liability. The liabilities really are for payments due to other government agencies and customer deposits. So essentially, we have very, very little liability. So with that, are there any questions about the financial statements?
Need a motion to pay the accounts payable? Motion by Dan, second by Juan. Any further questions? It's a roll call.
Jenny Sullivan,
Yes.
Juan Gonzalez,
Yes.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Mark Smith,
Yes.
Dan Bruno,
Yes.
Craig Leggett,
Yes.
Dave O'Brien,
Yes. And I need a motion to accept the year-to-date financial statement. Report. Craig, second by Mark. Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Reports committees, Canal Side Master Plan update.
Yeah, we met with our consultant, Labella, at their office, September 13th, 30. And we're in pretty good shape. We'll be getting together next Monday, I think, to review the plans for the wastewater and water grades. We're still looking at possibly 400,000 gallon water tank, which we need a water tank in accordance with the village,
Yes.
whatever. At the site,
Can I interject?
Sure.
You brought this up the other day. 400,000 gallons, big. I know in our water districts, they're 200, 250,000.
Right. We're just looking at this. We're not necessarily going to take it, use it. It's surplus, if you want to call it that, in the village. It's a stainless steel tank. I don't know what the terms were, if any, that
So they have this?
they have, yeah,
Not using it.
it was,
But- They also came in that we needed a 340,000 gallon tank for fire protection.
right.
So 400 is really not that far out.
The problem is that the water system, the way it is in a fire situation, would not supply the quantity of pressure that would be needed to fight any size of fire on the canal side site. In order to do that without the tank, we have to go back and upgrade village's water main for the length, blah, blah, blah. It would be costly. So we need this surge, if you will, with an accompanying booster pump to boost the pressure. Again, all this in the event of a fire. So you have the necessary quantity and pressure. So that's, therein lies the need or requirement by the village that we have a tank. So we're looking at this. Like I said, in fact, we haven't even physically looked at it yet. I talked to their water superintendent at this meeting. He described it to me where it is. So we'll take a look and see whether we want to use it, and if so, what the arrangements are for us to acquire it. Other than that, as I said, we're Labella's proceeding, finalizing the plans, which we will review. So we can pay myself, Bob Holmes, our consultant. Dave, you gonna be there?
When? Tomorrow, Wednesday,
Monday.
Next Monday.
next Monday? Maybe.
Page turning, we take the plans and go through them one at a time with the consultant. Anyway, then, once that's done, plans thus far, which are 90%, will be complete when they make any revisions that we require subsequent to that review. So we're in pretty good shape there. And as stated previously in the review of the minutes, Bob Holmes and I are craft an RFP for the next phase, if you will, which will be the final plan, the specifications, and the getting out the bid when we have the necessary funds. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. You have anything to add?
No, just the NEPA required for HUD drawdown of funds is almost complete, as is the seeker for submission to Fast New York. It is almost complete. We expect those to be able to go in by the end of the month. That's the theory.
No, those are, this is all through, Lake Champlain.
Well, NEPA is being prepared by Labella,
It is.
and the seeker is also being done. Matter of fact, we got the first draft in that we have to notify the agencies, so those notifications go out tomorrow. And we have 30 days to look, lead agency, and we're lead agency,
Any resolutions for that?
not until we get the lead agency done.
We have to send the documentation out, and then when it comes back, probably next board meeting, we'll be entering it as a resolution.
And just going from experience at the town level, even to college level, to go through the process, have we done that, saying that we're going?
Yeah, isn't that the intention to adopt that resolution that they forwarded?
Okay.
Right, and I think we decided we wanted to delay until the next meeting because we got to go ahead and note the notification.
No, you've got to adopt that resolution to appoint yourself. Yeah. And then that authorizes the submission of the notices.
Yeah.
So that resolution, we should adopt today. The one that they sent Thursday.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I can think of at this point. Canal side projects, tenant activity.
So at this time, do we want to adopt the resolution for us to proceed with pursuing to be lead agency?
Not until new business.
Sorry.
Yeah, the now side projects.
Yeah, the only project that's active right now is relocation of the fence. We have the application into Canal Corp. Their HS&E person's been on vacation, so we are waiting for that person to return. Person has returned, now to catch up with backload of work. So any day now we should get the approved permit, and then we'll start. We have one piece of equipment that hasn't been ordered. Quick turnaround, we get it ordered, and the work will start sometime, probably late September, early October. Should be a quick project. We'll have it done by the end of October.
Right, this is to provide an alternate means of ingress and egress to the site and still provide Canal Corporation's required security of the wharf area while we're using the alternate. So that's necessary.
And by the
Tenant
way,
activity is status quo. Kiewitz there, moving their parts and pieces in and out. Our Electric utilizing the building, and SMS Rail is transferring grain, or spent grain, to trucks to be hauled to farmers in the area to purchase that.
okay. In terms of any questions? In terms of unfinished business? Chuck?
On New Leaf, we have sent them a proposal for various lots at Airport Industrial Park Phase 2 that might work for their solar installation. They are interested, but we do have to work through this wetlands delineation issue. The Army Corps of Engineers, so we are working on that now. We're hoping they will come back and clarify their decision on the deed restrictions. And in fact, we believe the latest deed restrictions will not impair us from doing solar on the uplands. Certainly on the wetland, not the uplands. And if we are correct, then we do have a scheme where the solar development can occur on lots that have both wetlands and uplands. More to come on this. It's a technical issue, it's a legal issue, and we're slowly working through the issues.
When it's all said and done, is it worth it?
Well, it could be a long-term lease with Lilly. And that could be steady revenue for the IGA, so it could be actually.
In retrospect,
But
this whole delineation was a waste of time.
that's what you said is a 3-year project, this delineation.
Something should have been done in 6 months, has now been 3 years.
Does the chairman hold that up by any chance?
No, it wasn't. All right.
It was a 4-letter word.
ACO.
And a 7-letter word. Name.
That's it.
Army Corps engineer dropped the ball because the person who was supposed to be doing it was on his way to retirement and had some other issues, so ball got dropped substantially. We were told every time we contacted him, had calls with him, that it was on progress. Just wait. So anyhow,
We're still waiting. We're moving beyond it.
all right. Native development.
Native development. We were envisioning having the application for board consideration today's meeting. However, the seeker has not been yet approved. It is on the agenda in Queensbury for tomorrow. We're expecting approval to occur. Assuming it does occur, we're thinking of having a special board meeting on October 4th to then pass the resolution on the native development project. We'll notify the board about the special meeting after the Queensbury board, assuming the seeker is approved.
As a reminder, the native, that's off Queensbury Avenue on that lot.
That's correct. Native development, the 25,000 square foot building for specialty film, specialty sales company that deals with what they call foods, health, and the health of cattle and cows with their treatment process. We did review the application last board meeting. And again, we thought we teed up for board consideration here, but we just had this delay to see the process.
Well, and is that the planning board of Queensbury that?
It is.
So there, would they be approving a whole site plan at that time as well?
The site's already approved because it's a native industrial park. So it's just a seeker with the building itself, which actually really a technical modification where the square footage of the building, I think, was smaller than what is now anticipated. So there's just some minor modifications.
So from the 20,000 square foot building to 25,000 square foot building.
They're moving ahead.
Yep.
That's it on native development. Is there any additional questions?
And remind us of Flying Dutchman. Is that still
They're still flying.
Great question. They and a couple other cannabis companies that are on our pipeline list seem to be held up at this time. As you know, yeah, the Flying Dutchman, as you know, actually went through the IDA application process.
Yeah.
So that is a pending further action. But just like all the cannabis projects, they seem to be held up at this time.
Well, there's lawsuits about how they awarded the licenses that wasn't going to affect the ones that are approved. Now it's going to affect the ones that are approved. So they don't have their process straight. And
One word,
God knows when they're going to get that process done. It started this, what, 2 years ago? So. All right, Airport Industrial Park, Bolts by George, and looked at their property. They are looking at purchasing the sewer property that was owned by the Washington County Sewer District. They have made an offer to them. They will then have to go through getting approval to have outside boat storage there. And subsequently, the parcel he's interested in us. That is also going to be looked at once this other one's done. We did find disturbing news that is a little more wetlands than we thought. So Fortunately, it's not under any other jurisdiction than ours at this point.
That was gonna be my question, yeah. So is there anything on Queensbury site plan review for this or something where
Not
these
yet.
come up?
Not yet. He's still waiting on the other piece of property first. That's the primary one he wants to get done. If he can't have that one, he doesn't get ours.
Sure. That would be the main access across the sewage into the back.
Well, no,
lots
it's the
there.
main interested piece of property because it's level, it's flat, it's been cleared. It's got a building on it.
So the sewer district property is about 2 acres. Our property around is about 14 acres with a mix of uplands and wetlands. And there is the belief that that once the sewer district land is acquired, that perhaps our parcel could be developed. So there are several steps here for both by George, first securing the property from the sewer district, getting the approval to store boats on the property, and then looking at our property.
This other access, is that mostly wetlands? Am I reading that right?
Well,
On access,
yes, you are reading it right. Dave mentioned, Chairman mentioned that when the wetlands expert went in there, he identified more wetlands than originally expected. So yes, that access has been designated as wetlands, at least on preliminary.
Well, preliminary, that's been looking, we didn't want to invest any more money in that property, and if Post by George wants to purchase it, they will have to do their own delineation. We're not going to invest any more in that property. On speculation, so. Okay. We have a resolution for Yankee Marine date for extension resolution. Kara, would you explain that one, please?
Sure, when they first applied to the IDA, they had indicated that they would have a completion date of October 31st. But they were delayed in some of their getting started to the commencement of their work, so they've requested an extension of the sales tax through the end of the year.
So I will request a motion on approving that extension. Brian, second by Craig. Any further discussion?
Is there any reason to believe that they will need another extension, or do they think that everything's on track now?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I figured that when we closed on their project, that they were, they were just closing on their mortgage and their loan. So I'd asked at that time if they wanted us to consider an extension. I don't know if they're planning on doing both buildings by the end of the year.
Yeah, they wish to start storing boats this late fall. So one would anticipate that they would be done.
Okay.
Might be a timing with billings, project be done and the bill
Right.
a couple weeks later. So the extension hopefully will cover what they expect with construction and any lag effect with the billing.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Canal Side Lead Agency Resolution is a resolution that simply appoints us at the lead agent as the lead agency for the seeker for Fast New York. Motion by Craig, second by Dan. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I have a quick question. Kara, are you sending out those lead agency letters or am I?
It doesn't matter if you want us to do it or if you want to do it.
No, I can do it.
I just wasn't sure.
Okay, I'll do it. I just don't want us both doing it.
Yeah. I would send out also the copy of the resolution.
Okay.
For that.
is there any public notice that needs to go out with that as well?
Now, yeah, they've listed it, I think on listed action, so the determination doesn't need to be published because it's not a type 1, so I don't know if you'll get responses from everyone beforehand, or we might not be able to do any action at the next meeting if we haven't heard back from all the involved agencies. And that's, And I apologize, I just went back and read my email, it was like unclear what I was, what in my mind I was saying, when I suggest that, Labella comes to that meeting when you all consider the negative determination resolution, so they can go through the project with you and answer any technical questions that, you might have about the project.
So you think in our next board meeting? if
Yeah, I guess it'll depend if people consent right away and send it back, then you don't have to wait the 30 days, but if not everyone consents, then,
Won't be 30 days between now and next,
right,
after 30 days, it's deemed as.
right.
acceptance.
Do we have to do a part 3 with that?
That's the part I suggest that Labella come to go through with the board.
Have we had record of it?
Yeah,
Okay. All in favor? Carried. In your, so onto a little bright spot. In your packet, you should have gotten a map. This is of the IDA park. And it's what I reference as the northern 40. That's those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels that are go past Equistock and take a left. It's all the way out there. We have a proposal from a Dan Colum, who owns a piece of property abutting that. He's willing to purchase that property for $10,000. And we have a resolution that was sent out to authorize the purchase of those. The value of those properties is about $20,000 when we had appraisal done 2 years ago. I can't think of it went up. I don't think it went up anymore because it's just gotten worse in condition as far as wetlands. So I would ask for a motion to allow us to sell that piece of property.
Right. Additionally, we're paying taxes on that every year.
Mhm.
This will allow us, it's not the best property to begin with, and hanging on to it just incurs more costs for the IDA with land and site.
He's looked at this, he's looked at the deed restrictions. He understands the deed restrictions. He is going to use that for more or less a game preserve. He wants to make sure he puts some plants in there for deer and other wildlife to come in and visit him. So he also wants to ensure protection of his borders so that he can keep people out of there, and that's why protect his property that butts up against it. So that's what he wants to do. He understands he can't do any development or any changes there. Can't put any paths in there, can't put roadway in there. So I would appreciate selling that piece of property.
Will there be any access off of Ferguson, or that's cut up totally?
If he allows it. We'll have to do a lot line adjustment. There's a little piece of road that goes down. We'll have to do a lot line adjustment to get rid of that. So we won't be able to get in there.
Yeah, right now, the road does not reach that lot.
Right.
So if later we develop, if we extend the road and develop south of it, then one would say that there would be proximity for access, but right now, no direct access.
Was there a counter offer to his offer? I'll take that as a no.
There haven't been any offers in there forever.
When you look at the wetland map, the upland and wetlands, it's scattered all throughout these parcels. They're very, very,
But land is still land. And how many acres altogether?
25.
Land is land when it's encumbered by deed restrictions, et cetera, whether it's by us or the Corps of Engineers or whoever, it's land, but to what end, to what useful purpose?
Will he be encumbered by the Army Corps of Engineers?
You can come by deed restrictions.
And the deed restrictions are the same ones that we have on.
The only thing he was a little disturbed about was he couldn't put a path in there so he could go plant his trees and stuff. I'm sure he'll find out a way. So that piece of property is actually, in my opinion, he's the only person who could use that land for anything. And I figured you would,
What's the neighbors on the east side?
they couldn't use it for anything unless they want to do that, but I think that they're gonna acquire land they have to use. So I didn't expect to get that high an offer. So. You have someone like to make a motion on that? Motion by Dan, do I have a second? Mark? Any further discussion? This is a roll call.
Jenny Sullivan,
Yeah.
Juan Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Ryan Campbell,
Yeah,
Mark Smith.
Yes.
Dan Bruno,
Yes.
Craig Leggett,
No,
Dave O'Brien.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion passes.
Okay. As a matter of note, we had other properties on there that are all water. And we are going to the Tewksbury Town Board to explain to them why we can't use that for solar or anything else based on the restrictions given by Army Corps Engineer. They can't have a road. They need a road to put solar in. They can't put anything in the ground. Need to put at least poles in the ground. Can't put antennas, can't put other extensions that go up in the air on the property. So this was a request from the town. Actually, when we go back to them, we can tell them we have 4 other lots that at least these 5 lots would come off our request because someone wants to buy it. So we strictly down to, I think, 4 or 5 properties we're requesting to be taken out the water and sewer district because we can't develop them. So that'll be good. Their request, because they didn't understand that, I think Kara can fill you in on the conversation she had with their attorney.
Yeah, so they the town wants to follow suit with what the county sewer is going to do. So if county sewer is going to remove the lots and the town will remove the lots, they did some preliminary calculations, if you will, about what the balance would be of the taxes to be redistributed among the people that would remain in the district. And they were a little hesitant about removing the parcels because of that reason. And then the other parcels remaining would have to pick up the difference there. But they did, there was a bit of confusion because in other places, Army Corps is allowing the construction of a solar array on wetlands. And so there was a discrepancy between the information that they were hearing from us and the information that they were familiar with on other projects. I talked to Jeff Meyer, their attorney. I explained to them that this was coming from Army Corps with the delineation and the new covenants they put on the property. So that may be resolving itself, but that was part of the discussion that was kind of being transmitted between Jeff and myself and then back to our boards. So they thought it would just be easier if Bob Holmes could come to the meeting this evening and go over the maps with them and answer whatever questions that they had. So that's the request that was made.
so what was the difference? Why did they change their mind? Because they told us originally that we could put it on wetland. Why is our wetland different than any other?
Army Corps of Engineers never told us we could put it on there. If we go back to the interpretation, when New Leaf went in there, because we thought we could, they told New Leaf, no. Now, the question is they were looking at the older set of restrictions, which is a confusion now. The older set of restrictions says that no one
Forever wild, basically.
forever wild. And when we look at the new set, there are some differences, but still the differences in the current 2022 restrictions is the fact that you can't put anything on wetlands, which they thought they could do. There's also that we can't use that ground for mitigation as we did in other places. There's no sense in giving wetlands for mitigation for some other piece of property. And for those who don't remember, we did that mitigation, constructed wetlands for the airport extension, which never happened. So we lost we lost the ability to do anything on that property forever. Thanks, Warren County. No airport extension, no runway extension. No, I'm just kidding. That was a very debatable issue over the years about that runway extensions. I think it still is.
Yeah. Is the assessment ad valorem on those lots for the sewer district?
I don't know if they do it by a benefit approach or,
They do it by a benefit. They are changing in the new system to go ad valorem. Yep, because their problem was they never put aside money for improvements down there. For some reason, that sewer district was never put in, so they never had any capital put aside to do some construction that had to be done, especially when they're going to have to slip line the sewer line that goes up Queensbury Avenue, which serves both sides of the road. And at the time we did that project, that phase one also included both sides of the road. Now we have nothing to do with phase one, so that's up to them. The question?
Well, we just put together a couple of districts over the past couple of years, and our attorney was always very sure, saying, okay, make sure you have everybody in there, but taking anybody out, it's almost an act of God.
yeah, and I don't know if there's debt service. If there's debt service, I'm pretty sure they've got to go back to the legislature and ask for permission to have those.
There's no debt service.
There's no.
Yeah. So anyhow, we'll see what happens, but right now we hope to get them out there. You know, paying $100 a year is one thing, but paying $300-400 a year on property we can't use. And should be beneficial because the property we're selling to Mr. Cullum goes back on the tax rolls.
If we had a regional sewer district, it would be very much a benefit to all our counties. You know, if you had Queensbury, Glens Falls, and Washington County all together. Yeah. Kind of what we saw at NICEAG meeting in Johnstown, how they connected everybody together.
That's right.
That's kind of what we need, and I know that Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board is trying to steer them that way, but it's kind of like merging school districts.
Mhm.
So good luck.
With some differences.
Not a lot.
Okay. Anything else for the IDA? Did I miss anything? Educational moment. Oh, we're gonna get educated.
What about staff report?
Oh, staff report.
Staff report? Okay, so we put the staff report at the end of the major part of the agenda to avoid some redundancy. I actually have 28 items, but I'm gonna skip over items that we've already talked about. I'll start with on August 16th, the Warren, Washington Strategic Economic Alliance met. We meet at the EDC office, and the topic of that meeting was the SEC announcement and ongoing efforts on the housing issues within both counties. Also on that day, attended in Chester, Supervisor Leggett, the housing forum featuring Jim Siflon and Adam Feldman. Jim, of course, we know Adam has a background in housing, including financing. So I think the two of them speaking together on the housing at that forum was very good. Anything to add to that? Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. The next day attended the Tri-County United Way event at Cronin's Golf Course. A little bit of networking and golf, as bad as I am. Then on the 21st, I met with a Washington County manufacturing business owner wishing to expand. I explained our investment incentives and provide an application. We've just unfortunately learned from the person who does banking out of New York City with a national bank that the bank will not permit him to do an SBA loan and an IDA incentive. And there's frankly nothing we can do about this. It's not our rule, it's his bank's rule. So unfortunately, that will not be an incentive application for us. Then moving forward on August, hang on, I'm trying not to be redundant. August 22nd, attended Washington County Fair. Actually had a very nice discussion with Bob Henke and his granddaughter about the bee business. Then on the 23rd, attended the New York State Economic Development Council webinar hosting Kevin Lahanahan, who is a vice president of external affairs and corporate communication at the New York Independent Systems Operator, to present an assessment on the reliability of the New York State electrical grid and potential impacts to economic initiatives in New York State. The webinar was very informative. They have an impressive understanding of both their grid and the generation. Two themes. They have a theme of dealing with New York State reliability, New York City reliability needs by 2025, particularly the electrification of transportation and building sector, including our project with CHPE, where they are sincerely relying on the timely delivery of electricity to New York City by 2026. And then they also talked about the retirement of select generators under New York State DEC emission limits, and some of the retirement of generations, the pressure of making sure we find new generation to meet the needs throughout the state. Sorry to go deep on that, but did find it very interesting.
And any word on being able to supply demand?
Well, they're relying, of course, on hydro, the expansion of solar, New York City on CHPE, but there's going to be a potential gap. They haven't figured out how to close it yet. Yeah, and they might have to circle back with some of their rules, but that's for the policymakers to decide upon in Albany.
You don't think solar will make up the difference?
Now, we do not think solar can make up the difference.
So do we know if CHPE is actually on schedule?
We hear they're not, and we see it in our site. They were later than expected setting up. And there was also an approval issue with zone 3 that took a little longer than expected. So we're hearing they're behind. They obviously be striving to make up time. Who knows if they'll do it? Mr. Bruno?
Of course, we're early side that too.
They had problems with permitting and sort of thing. Some of the areas where they needed to put in roads, et cetera, to enable them to construct their power line. So there were areas where they were scheduled the county on getting in there, and then lo and behold, they didn't have things in place. I don't know if it's their fault or not. That's a judgment, but that's kind of throwing a monkey wrench into some. I don't know if they will come back.
Yeah. Ironically, they might be on our site a little longer than expected, so we might get some lease income longer than expected. With our bigger picture issue, which is more important, they do seem to be running behind a little bit. Okay, so continuing
On that,
Sorry.
on that, they're in a contract to be done by last quarter of 2025. They weren't going to not operate during wintertime. They are now going to operate during the wintertime, 12 months a year. It hopes to make up that date because they got penalties not making it, so you're gonna have to drive it. Are they gonna make it? I still don't think so, but not by as much as we think.
If they processed everything through us that they were supposed to.
Yep,
Our application's complete and everything.
we're all approved, ready to go, waiting for completion date so the money starts rolling in.
Okay, continuing on, August 24th, met with a Queensbury-based manufacturer looking to expand in our region. They're still looking at site selection issues, actually within both counties. More to come on that project. Also met with a housing entrepreneur who was exploring projects in Bolton and Warrensburg and other parts of our county. More to come on that project. Also met, we talked earlier about Adam Feldman, met with him for lunch, and we talked about different financing strategies for housing projects in our region, including IDA incentives, and we'll see what transpires there as he and others work on various housing projects. On the 30th of August was a day trip to SMS Rail headquarters in Logan Township, New Jersey. 5-hour drive down, 5-hour drive back in the evening. They have impressive capability for loading and unloading a variety of materials, ranging from liquids that actually solidify in tanker cars, and they will heat up the car to then drain the fluids out. They do petrochemicals, they do hazardous chemicals, they do gases, they do light and dense minerals, they do lumber, including utility poles. And this is good for us to understand because as we deal with tenants at Canal Side, SMS is a little bit of a go-to short rail line that could help potential tenants. As a matter of fact, now that we understand their capability, we've added them to our website. So if someone is looking at our website, wants to know more about Canal Side Energy Park, they can also now learn more about the short rail in and out of the park. Just continuing here. On September 5th, Chairman and I were interviewed by the Warren County, or actually by Labella, that is steering up the Warren County Comprehensive Plan. And they asked to interview us, and we provided some ideas and some feedback. Then on the following day, actually, Allie and I met with Biz Leads. This is a new company that's going to be providing database information to us so we can research potential clients within our region and people outside our region that are interested in our region. And then on the same day, September 6th, I met with the Johnsburg business looking to expand a manufacturing business within Johnsburg. Then on the 7th of September, Chairman and I, Mr. Bruno, met with Canal Corp and some road superintendents from both the town and county to discuss steps for planning temporary access to the industrial park when the bridge is being replaced, or will be replaced supposedly in 2 years. And we started identifying some preliminary actions, and they're underway. No fatal flaws are identified at this time. Then also on that day, I attended the Lake George Workforce Housing Committee. They are finalizing the report with Moyne Associates, and they'll be released fairly soon. And in those actions include the IDA incentives for helping potential housing projects within Lake George region. That will be a decision that the village and town will need to make on their own. Had an update meeting with ARCC on the 13th. We talk every couple of weeks just to compare notes of things going on in the community. Then on the 13th of September, I attended the Johnsburg Housing Forum, very similar to what happened in Chester, but with Supervisor Smith and also Jim Siplon and Adam Feldman. I thought that was a very lively discussion.
Trying a new toy out.
What's that?
I'm trying a new toy out.
Yeah, we tried our new toy out. Yes, we did. Then on the 14th, attended Glen Falls National Bank renovation and the ribbon cutting ceremony. Then that same day, or the next day, I'm sorry, did a canal side tour with a local business entrepreneur looking to potentially relocate to the Canal Side Industrial Park. And then on the same day, attended the Glen Falls Civic Center Foundation event at Highland. And then finally on today, I met with representatives of Glen Falls National Bank for them to understand the incentive programs we offer. And that was very well received. And that, of course, we do with all banks. So any bank interested in learning about what we can do to help them with their clients, we're ready, willing, and able to go speak with the bank representatives. So with that, any questions with my report out?
Oh, this pertains directly to your report. The potential hemp processing entity, is that dead, gone, or
I'll let Mr. Chairman.
where is?
You're on a pause. You're on a pause. Yes, Brad.
Yeah, but We haven't heard anything.
On a pause is all I've heard.
So is you talk about SMS rail and linking them to our website. What kind of interrelationship do we have with Canal Corp if people want to use our site through the canal?
Well,
Have they
Well,
anything
through the
formal
canal.
officially?
great question. I mean, through the Canal Corp, we would then work with Canal Corp.
But do we have do you have a specific direction from Canal Corp, what they are willing to do, not willing to do as a basis when you get in a discussion?
Well, we don't have any target opportunities, but we're aware of if someone wants to move their product in and out of that wharf, they need to address Canal Corp to reach agreement on what's going to be done and how.
Because I've been informed of one that was gonna talk to you, and I just wondered how that worked.
We're aware of one that's brewing too, but they have not reached out to us yet.
Okay,
That's the aggregate.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have not heard.
I
from them
don't,
yet.
I don't know what the one was that I heard, but they said they were gonna talk to you, so I assume it's the same one.
Yeah, so
No,
hopefully they'll reach out soon.
it's not the same one.
On your interview with Lubella on comprehensive plan there, did they ask good questions?
Pardon?
Did they ask good questions?
Whom?
With LaBella on the comprehensive plan.
We want kind of confident.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't expect some of the answers, but they asked some good questions.
They're engineers, you know, I know, so you.
So good.
Actually, they're planners. The ones that spoke to us were planners.
That was-
Snow Brain,
and Chris.
Brainstone approached us 3 years ago with a request to ship through the port. They have already come to agreement with the Canal Corp if in fact they decide to ship. Right now, they are shipping from Fort Ann, Block 7, I think it is. They're shipping down through the canal. I understand, though I have never seen it, they're transporting 4 to 5 barges a week right now. So we don't know. So no, that's why I know it wasn't yours, because they've already talked to the Canal Corp, and they've already talked to us.
The one that was brought up to me, I had no idea what the business was. It was a banker, so I couldn't tell you.
So that's why I knew it wasn't Brain, because we already talked to them. We already got a proposal out to them.
Large aggregate going down, riprap going down to the New York City region. But that's all we know. And again, we have not been formally approached.
Yes, we have.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, years before my time. I apologize.
Before your time, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And they did
This
discuss it
one was
when we were.
new, so I don't know anything about that. I'll talk to you after.
BC.
BC.
Okay, on ST, we did have a meeting with ST.
What's that?
We did have a meeting with ST Upper Echelon. They are going to put the building in Greenwich and in South Glens Falls on the marketplace. They've given us guidance on what we can and can't do. And we expect to have more activity sometime in January or February when they're ready to close down the site. They're not ready to have people going through there yet, but we are able to ask for solicitation on anyone who's willing to purchase that property. We have one in store. So,
And when we met with them, we asked if what they were telling us was confidential or not. And they said, no, you're more than willing to talk about this, but we haven't necessarily been advertising it. But they did give us a go ahead to talk publicly that the site, Greenwich site, would be available for purchase. And possibly
South Glens Falls.
South Glens Falls.
and South Glens Falls. So we don't have any interest in South Glens Falls because we don't do any business there.
Also technically outside our region. Yes, the Saratoga.
Must be next.
So, okay.
My understanding is they do not want that resurrected as a tissue paper.
That's not true.
Really? Cut holes in the dryer, stuff like that. So
Well, they will remove all the paper mating or converting equipment.
Yeah.
The only restriction they have in their contract is that they have to notify the union if another paper making company goes in there. So there's no restriction. They will get, whoever buys it will get a clean, empty building, no matter which it is. All the equipment will be destroyed or removed. But they don't care if it's, they're not concerned with the fact that a competitor may acquire that music.
You're afraid that they were concerned that someone would come in and reuse their equipment, the equipment that's there.
In previous operations, they have banned any use for paper. This one they're not, because I cried and said, hey, listen, you know, this is a distressed area. We've lost a lot of jobs. I didn't do it, but I did make the, I did make the presentation that this was a bad impact on Washington County, and it would be nice if we could find someone who could stand up here and take over some of their employees. So they'd already made the decision before we talked to them.
How many employees in Greenwich?
I believe it's 90, give or take 10, I think,
They've all told between all three sites, 300 plus.
330. Okay, so that's news. Anything else? Educational moment?
Then we get it, we did it because we need those.
Okay, today I'm just gonna briefly go over, so when we close on a project, we have several documents, but the most important documents are the lease back agreement and the pilot. So transactionally, procedurally, what happens is that the company enters into a lease agreement with us, leases their property to us. We then immediately lease it back to them so that they can undertake the project that they've applied to the IDA for. And then as part of that, we file with the county clerk's office memos of both of those leases, and then we enter into a pilot agreement. And so the lease arrangement gives us the necessary jurisdiction and control over the property that is required by New York State in order to allow for our benefits to go to the company for the project. So our pilot agreement, I just pulled the most recent one we did just so I could go through some of the provisions that are in here with you. So the most recent one we did was Yankee Marine, but we have other projects with this same schedule. And it is a 50% exemption for 5 years, and then a 25% exemption on the improvements for the second 5 years. So all of our pilots generally run for a 10-year term, though we do have some that have a different length of time, but that's the standard, the 10-year period. So for instance, with Yankee Marine, we'll file the 412A, which is the form that gets filed with the town assessor's office, and it's not effective. The pilot doesn't kick in with the exemption schedule until after March 1st of next year. So the first time that they will have an exemption on their taxes will be school tax year 2024, 2025. So they'll still get a pilot payment in January or a pilot invoice in January, but that'll just be based on the base tax that is agreed upon at the time that we close on their transaction. So typically the base value is what the assessed value is at that time, but then there are other instances where if the property is changing classification from maybe ag property to industrial, there might be, or commercial, then there might be a change. And then we work with the assessor's office to go through that to get the base value for the project. So the project for the period of 10 years always pays the base value, pays taxes on the base value. They pay all special district taxes, so water, sewer, fire, library, any if they're in those districts, special districts. So those taxes are not exempt. They pay 100% of those taxes as well. And then the exemption is on the improvement. So once the property is completed or once the project's completed and the assessor goes back out and reassesses the property, then the exemption is on that difference between the base value and the new assessed value going forward for the term of the pilot. And then administratively, Ally sends out the invoices to the companies. They pay the IDA, and then you turn over the money to the necessary taxing jurisdictions. Not all IDAs do it that way. Some municipalities send them out directly, but we've historically had control of sending those out and making sure the payments come back in. The agreement says it goes through and also talks about that there is an exemption on the mortgages that are recorded as part of this project. Of course, if the board approves that, and then the sales tax exemption. And it's linked to also our recapture policy. So if there is a default under the terms of the pilot agreement, which primarily would be that the project wasn't completed as they indicated it would be, or they don't pay the taxes.
Real quickly, could you explain or re-explain that lease agreement arrangement you started with at the beginning? Just so I make sure I understand.
So the state says that we have to have some sort of jurisdiction and control over the property in order to give the benefits that we are statutory authorized to give. So years ago, we would do a deed, and so the company would actually deed us the property, and then we would lease it back to them. So we would be the record owner of the property. There had been over the course of the years lawsuits relating a lot of labor law issues that, like, if someone was injured on the site. So so there was a move, if you will. Some IDAs still do the deed, but then there was, a move to maybe do it just by the lease agreement. It was also easier in the event of a default. It's easier to cancel
So
the lease.
we lease it from that
Mhm.
entity. We lease it and then
Lease it right back.
lease it back. Okay.
Yeah,
That's great.
so the first lease, the lease agreement is basic because they're just leasing it to us. It's for the same amount of term that the pilot runs. Everything's based on the length of the pilot. And then our lease, where we lease it back to the company, includes all the requirements of what they need to comply with. They need to comply with reporting, they need to pay the pilot payments, they need to, be in compliance with all those items that they're undertaking that particular project.
Legally able to do all. what they
Right.
want to do with it.
Right, and we put those both on record in the county clerk's office, both of those lease agreements in a memo form, so it's a shorter
And
document.
then when it's all said and done,
We terminate all those documents, so we terminate the leases, we put the leases agreements on record as terminations, and we terminate the pilot, and we're required to send a notice to the taxing jurisdictions to let them know that their pilot is expired. Now we're required to send it 2 years in advance.
Is that all legal? Has that been tested in court at all?
The process? I think so.
The lease back, because it sounds, good lawyers, yeah.
Yeah, it's called the straight lease transaction. I don't think there's ever been any. But that's my spiel on the pilot.
thank you.
Any questions for Kara?
So you still make a distinction between a calendar year and a tax year, right?
Yes, both counties have a way that they like to see their schedule listed out for their project. So this one, we just do tax roll year. And actually Washington County prefers that we just do year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they start it on that. So there's a provision in here that says, okay, so they're going to finish with their school tax in 2034, but they still get the benefit the following January of town and county. So they'll still be under the pilot. We'll terminate that, but they're still responsible for the full taxation, even if this hasn't completely terminated. So there is that 6-month period of time between when the January taxes come out and then the school taxes in the September timeframe.
So the pilot payments go to the IDA and then the IDA makes those to municipality
Correct.
until the thing is terminated.
Yeah.
But in the ideal world, you want the pilot to end in the following year, the tax, so you don't want them to be both.
Right, so they won't get both, and it'll. I don't, sometimes, I don't know if certain municipalities might know and put them back on the regular tax, even though they still are subject to the pilot when they're 100% taxation. I don't know if.
No, if that's the case, I just, if it hasn't been turned over yet,
Yeah,
I just send them out like a regular pilot payment, like for instance, HF Park
yeah,
for school, they paid 100%. I just billed them 100%,
right, they pay 100% of the
but it came
tax.
from me,
Yeah, until it goes back on the tax roll, because that,
right?
so, yeah, so like this one is Warren County and they're okay with the year of the tax year. Washington County prefers it to be like 1, 2, 3, 4 years. So,
Yeah, because you have something completed in January and says, well, we'll do something the next tax year. Well, that's actually March.
right, yeah,
You know, we had an instance 14 years ago, that we had one that they paid the pilot and then they got a tax bill and that caused a little bit of we get it straightened out.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? We are adjourned from IDA. We now call the CDC meeting to order. And the membership, the attendees are still the same. So I need we have a quorum. Need approval of minutes of the May 17th, 2023 CDC board meeting. Do I have such a motion? Motion by Mark, second by Brian. Any omissions or corrections? All in favor? Opposed? Review of financials.
Financials are fairly straightforward. The only expense has been the shifting of funds, $150,000, which was monies associated with the canal side industrial park and the I'm sorry, let's step back. We got funding from the CHPE project, which resides within the CDC. We moved $150,000 from the CDC to the IDA earlier this year. That is really the only major expense for the CDC this year. As far as the balance sheet, there is $655,000 in checkings and savings. There are very little liabilities. So again, a very strong balance sheet. So that's it for financials of the CDC, unless there are any questions.
Any questions?
Where do we put the interest? Not sure.
We have our money in CD. And
Sure, can we update that?
correct. I think it's going to mature pretty soon. Ask them not to renew it. I think that we're going to transfer. We're going to bill the CDC and bring money over because we can't get into some of these ICS funds. But we are in the IDA to make 5 or 6% interest. So
I was gonna say that I know the way it's set up. The way our towns work with Glens Falls National, you have to have someone that doesn't just offset fees, but right now the fees are so little compared to the interest. I'm not sure anybody believes that.
well, the problem with that is that isn't a municipal corporation. That's a nonprofit. Different rules. We tried to get the same application there with Glens Falls National. They said no. Okay. Other new business? Yes.
I drove up Ferguson yesterday in Case Road. The new buildings do look great. On top looks great there. The Scotty building was smaller than I had expected. I don't know when those went up. I don't think it was that long ago that I've been by there.
Scotty's been up there for almost 9 months, a year, 9 months. Okay. Actually, Hilltop started construction about 6 months ago. See how long it's been since you've been up, Casey? Okay, or you didn't notice what was on the side of the road.
Right. I did come out of Industrial Park 1 there. I think you look over on that side of the road. Just a couple minutes ago.
You didn't want to see the swamplands. All right, we have today return of organization exempt from income tax.
Just quickly, does anybody need to, make a first and second on the financial reports?
Oh, I need a first and second on financial reports. Brian, second by Dan. All in favor? Carried. Now we're at 990. Look through, it was sent out to you. This is a report we have to do for the exemption. Anyone have any questions?
Can I explain this just a little bit? This is something that we've never done before, not the full form 990. Most of the time, the form 990 for the CDC gets approved. The EZ form gets approved because there's usually not a lot of activity for the CDC, and it gets approved when the audit gets approved. But that was when WDR used to do our audit. Now EFPR had done it for the year 2022, and they had filed for an extension to file this later on this year. So this is why you're seeing it now. This is usually done at the beginning of the year. And like I said, the form is a little bit different. It's the long form. And I reviewed the numbers. They're everything that QuickBooks had said, so everything is matching. I know a lot of this you probably aren't familiar with, but when I was reviewing it, there's only a few changes that I would recommend for the board. There's this one part on page 2 of part 3. Just inserting the CDC's mission statement in addition to what they have there. I think that would benefit. And also on page 6 at the bottom, it says where can we find this information? They have our physical address. I would also like to add our website as well, because all this information is also on the website. Other than that, those are the only 2 changes that I would recommend. But are there any questions?
So what triggers the long form?
The $2 million that we got from the CHPE.
Okay,
That's what we get a lot of triggers going forward.
pardon?
That's what we get a lot of triggers going forward.
There you go. All right, any other questions? I'll entertain a motion with the recommendations that Ally has made to make the changes. Moved by Jenny, second by Dan. Any further discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Any of the business come before the CDC? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.